Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I bought in my recent order from the House of Trembling Madness down in York. Awesome beer shop if you can get there physically, and they've also got a great web shop as well, which is very good value, so I highly recommend that you check it out. But for this review we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good couple of times before. They really made their name when it came to the hazy New England style IPAs, but today we're going to have a look at something a little bit different from these guys. It is a style that they can do very well, and I know from personal experience that they can do it well, but apparently they've taken a little bit of a different approach to this one, so I'm quite curious to see how it turns out. For this review then, we are going to go down to Manchester and we're having a look at another beer from Cloudwater Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Crystallography. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a West Coast IPA, but apparently this one is not the most bitter of West Coast IPAs that they've done. They've gone for a more kind of dry approach to it, so I think this could be a very, very interesting beer. But over the course of 2020 I reviewed 3 beers from Cloudwater. All 3 came from their new core range that they have. It was the IPA, the West Coast IPA and the double IPA. I think the West Coast IPA, if I remember rightly, was given to me by my friend Adam over at Mersey Beers. Do make sure you check out his channel. But yeah, all 3 of those beers were really very nicely done, very, very solid beers, but not quite as crazy as some of the more experimental things that you can find from Cloudwater. But like I said, these guys are a highly, highly respected brewery, and they do some really, really awesome beers in my experience. When it came to choosing this beer, I literally just wanted something from Cloudwater, and this beer was the one that caught my eye when I was going through the House of Trembling Madness. As I've mentioned on the channel before, I studied chemistry as my first undergraduate degree and went up to master's level with that, and crystallography was one of the areas that I really, really enjoyed studying. My teacher in crystallography was actually a professor called Bill Harrison, who basically decoded the crystal structure of the famous IBCO, yttrium barium copper oxide superconductor. So yeah, it was pretty cool to have him as my teacher. He was a really nice guy, always recommended that we read Wikipedia pages actually, and I think he was actually going in and writing quite a few of these things on the ones he was recommending us to read. But yeah, crystallography was always a technique that I enjoyed. When it comes to science, it's one of the most powerful techniques that you can have. You can literally figure out the molecular structure of anything with that if you can get it to crystallize. So yeah, if you're going into science, crystallography is definitely the place to go actually. So that was the main reason why I wanted to review this beer, and on top of that I love a good West Coast IPA, which you'll know if you've been watching the channel. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we get on then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Cloudwater Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see more added to that at some point in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland, and I did that order from House of Trembling Madness as I mentioned. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Cloudwater Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So, Cloudwater Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Manchester down in England, and they were founded back in early 2015 by Paul Jones and James Campbell after the latter left Marble Brewing Company, another brewery that I do recommend that you check out. But they were joined in the early days by Al Wall and Will France, who had a wealth of experience from home brewing, professional brewing and in bar management. But the company lease an archway, and this allows them to kind of age and sour many of their beers at a capacity of up to 200 barrels a time. They began began brewing their beer in March of 2015, and they officially opened their brew pub in April of that year. And they do have 2 tap rooms actually. There is one at the Barrel Store and there is one at the actual brewery, if I remember rightly. But they started off with a 2,400 litre brew kit, but they've got enough floor space to kind of double this capacity and even triple it. And I think they've done that in recent years, and they have been expanding. They have been planning to expand beyond that. Apparently, they're currently looking at new premises around the city for a larger brewery, and I think, you know, they really do need that actually, because they are so well respected and very well known actually these days. They're probably one of the whale breweries in England, if you can call them that. But these days they've got their Unit 9 tap room in Manchester, and they also have another bar at 73 Enid Street down in London as well actually. When I was in Manchester in, was that 2017 or 2018, when we met up with Paul Romeli from PA Brew News and a bunch of the other English beer tubers. It was really great to go around there, and we actually went to the Barrel Store, I think it was, from Cloudwater, so that was really fun to go there. I do recommend that if you're in Manchester, and hopefully this year I can get down there at some point and do some filming with Peter and maybe Adam. At some stage. Peter the Clueless Drinker, Adam at Mersey Beer, so you might see a few Cloudwater out and about videos at some stage. But in early 2018 these guys became the 2nd best brewery in the world according to Rate Beer, which is a very well respected peer review site, and I'm guessing you'll know that if you watch these videos. But they've been consistently ranked amongst the best breweries in the world for a number of years. The current head brewer is Al Wall, and as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 175 different kinds of beer. As I said to you, they mainly made their name when it came to the hazy New England style IPAs, but more recently they have been diversifying a little bit. There's been a few imperial stouts and things from them. They've been releasing a few lager beers and different kinds of IPAs as well actually. So that's something that I do still need to review from Cloudwater at some stage, is one of the imperial stouts. So yeah, maybe in September when I'm home again in Scotland I might make another order from the House of Trembling Madness or something like that, and see if we can review something from those guys. Or maybe when I go on my little England tour, I will try and get some black IPAs and some darker beers from Cloudwater, because that's something that, if memory serves me correctly, I still haven't touched upon from these guys. But like I said, a hugely respected English craft brewery these days, one of the best known craft beer names in England, and one that I would definitely recommend that you check out if you get the chance. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Cloudwater Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those 175 different beers that they've done thus far. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is absolutely beautiful. As I said earlier, the scientific name was what drew me to this beer. They had quite a few Cloudwater beers on the House of Trembling Madness, and you know, when it comes down to it, if it's a brewery that I know is good or it's a brewery that I want to try, usually I just pick them on the basis of the artwork or the name, because I think that's as good a reason as any if it's a brewery that either you know or you don't know very well. But yeah, it's beautiful there. We talked about crystallography as a technique earlier on in the video, but yeah, it says on the side here, this is a tribute to the strong, heavily hopped West Coast beers that captured our hearts by combining incredible depth of flavour with effortless drinkability. It's rich and intense, yet still soft, fresh and bright, with a finish that's deliciously dry and clean rather than aggressively bitter. So yeah, I have to say I am really curious to see what this one has in store for us, because I think this one could be quite I think this could be really quite interesting. But yeah, this is a 440ml can. I honestly can't remember what I paid for this. It must have been about £6.50, £7, something like that. So yeah, I think it would be pretty decent. Maybe probably about £6, because as I say, that House of Trembling Madness website is pretty good value. But to translate that for those of you watching in other places, £6, let's take £6, that's probably about 72 Swedish kroners for those of you in Sweden. It's maybe about €8 and maybe, you know, $8.50, $9 US, something like that. But yeah, 440ml can, like I said. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. There you can see on the front of the glass there is the Cloudwater symbol. And as I say, I absolutely love the artwork of this one. Crystallography, such a powerful analytical technique in chemistry. I loved studying that. So big shout out to Bill Harrison from Aberdeen University. in this review. I always remember him teaching us about all the different symmetries and things in that you could get in crystals. Yeah, crystallography, awesome technique. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious about this beer. So yeah, Bill actually as well, that I mentioned, Bill Harrison, I know he is a fan of his beer, but I think he's more into the kind of, I'm not sure, but I think he likes wine as well, but I think he's more into the kind of English traditional really, if I remember rightly. I'm not sure how interested he is in the more, how do you say, the more American style craft beers, if you like. I need to go and see him at some stage and chat to him about that. But yeah, this beer, I have to say, it looks very, very nice. So as you can see, this beer has poured a lovely kind of bright, I would describe this one as bright yellow. It's got a very slight amber tinge to it, but yeah, a very slight amber tinge for sure. Not the kind of richest of ambers that you're going to come across, but yeah, lovely colour of beer, this one. Let me just see that you guys can see this nicely in the camera. But yeah, if I shine the light through this, it's got a lovely kind of brightness to it and just a very small hint of amber to it. But you can see that this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy white head, and that's faded away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer, and it's got quite a thick a kind of thick foamy ring around the very edge of the glass. But if we shine the light through this one, it does have that sort of natural haze type thing that you would expect of the West Coast IPAs. The West Coast IPAs, of course, nowhere near as hazy as the New Englands, which are packed full of oats and wheat and things like that. The West Coast IPAs tend to be more, they tend to be a little bit more barley malt focused, but it's not unheard of to have wheat and or oats in them, of course. But yeah, lovely looking beer, this one. Nothing overly surprising about this beer, but yeah, it's definitely not quite as amber as you're going to find from some of the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Right. On first smelling, it actually comes across as being quite a bready beer, this one. But remember, with the West Coast IPAs, you've kind of got two ends of the spectrum with these. You can have the big oily caramelly things such as the Torpedo from Sierra Nevada, but you've also got the more kind of bready leaning ones such as the Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing Company. And I was very lucky to be able to try that beer last year along with the Pliny for President. So I need to see if I can get Pliny the Younger at some stage. I would love to have a go at that one for sure. But yeah, this beer, it really is one of the more kind of, it's definitely one of the more kind of bready leaning West Coast IPAs. I feel like you can still smell a little bit of New England sort of influence in this one, so I wouldn't be surprised if this beer does have a little touch of like wheat or oats in it. Does it say? Yeah, this one does have oats in it. It does have oats, and that, as I say, it's not unheard of in the West Coast IPAs, but it's certainly not madly common amongst them, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that New England sort of vibe in this one for sure. But yeah, nice soft white bready character coming out of this one. You can smell the oats kind of smoothing that out a little bit. They're definitely playing a role in the aroma of this beer. There is a nice little bit of a kind of sweet caramel in there, but you get a few biscuity notes as well, like a McVitie's Digestive biscuity kind of thing. So I do like that about this beer for sure, actually. I like the way that the malty character in this one comes out, is quite nice. So yeah, soft white bready character in there, sweet caramel. You can smell a little bit of the oats kind of smoothing it out as well, and a little bit of a McVitie's Digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is quite, is really pretty nice in that sense. So yeah, definitely leaning towards the bready end of that West Coast spectrum, actually. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to report in that on the malty side of things with that. I think it's pretty straight up there. I think it'll get a little bit more complex in the flavour for sure though. But on the hoppy side of things, let's look at the green side of the hops. When you take the aroma in, it's got a nice, quite deep floral aromaticity to it, but as they're kind of hinting at on the can, it's not, you know, big and resinous and things like that. I mean, back in the day, you would have had these beers, you know, early hopped up to the hilt with the likes of, you know, Chinook and Columbus. You know, they would have been giving you the big Chinook would be giving you the big piney resinous notes. Columbus would be giving you the big floral aromatic spice. But a lot of the West Coast IPAs these days, they've taken away the big bitter aspect of them. So that's what makes me wonder, how will I feel about this beer? Because I think a West Coast IPA needs at least, you know, 70 IBUs, 60, 70 IBUs. But a lot of the West Coast IPAs you find these days, they've got the malt base that the West Coast IPAs always had, but they've not got the same level of bitterness. And for me, having gotten into beer, you know, I started reviewing beer in 2013, but before that, you know, maybe about 2011 or so, you know, having got into beer at that stage, I think the West Coast IPAs do need the bitterness. The more modern West Coast IPAs have been adapted for those that have got into the beer a little bit later, so they're less bitter now. And you can tell with this beer, that is what it's going to be like for sure. So hopefully that doesn't affect the flavour too much, but you've got a good little bit of grassiness to this beer. You've got a nice little bit of you know, kind of floral aromaticity coming out of it as well. It's quite bright. The floral aromaticity in this beer is quite bright. It's not overly kind of resinous, if that makes sense. There's not really a lot of pine resin to this beer, and there is a teeny little bit of a slight earthiness to this one as well, which sometimes you can get from hops such as Mosaic. I do wonder if there's a bit of Mosaic in this one actually, from what's going on. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I think that covers the green side of this beer. It's well balanced between the floral and the grassy side of things, and it's not aggressive or pungent in that sense, I should say. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. You do get a little bit of a passion fruity note out of this one. You can smell a slightly stronger passion fruit in there, some mangoes and stuff like that. There's something familiar about the hops in this beer. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something fairly, you know, fairly well known, such as Citra and maybe a little bit of like Mosaic or something like that. There's definitely an orangey element to this beer. But yeah, passion fruit in this one for sure. A little bit of a stronger passion fruit, some juicy mangoes as well. Yeah, there's not too much complexity to the tropical fruits in this one, I don't think. But it's also got a little bit of it's also got a wee bit of a kind of orangey tangerine sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of Mosaic in this one. It's got quite a bright tangerine orangey thing coming out of it. So yeah, the flavour profile of this beer, the aroma, I always mix that up when I'm doing these reviews, flavour and aroma. The aroma profile of this beer is pretty damn nice. Nice tangerine oranges, soft, you know, a little bit of a soft kind of mango-y note to this one, a wee bit of passion fruit as well. I think this is, I think this could be, there is something just kind of old school about this. It might be, you know, Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic. I've got a feeling that it could be some kind of combination like this that's coming out of this beer. There is a little bit of, you know, there is a wee bit of a lemony zesty sort of thing to it. Could there be a wee bit of Centennial in this one? There's something in my head saying there might be Centennial in this beer as well. Centennial, of course, gives you a sort of more kind of lemony note about it, and there is just something, there's something kind of old school and a bit nostalgic about the fruity side of this beer. So yeah, passion fruit, mango, tangerine orange, and then a wee bit of a kind of lemony zesty type note to the beer as well. So yeah, it strikes me overall in the aroma as being quite straight shooting, so do take a little bit of time and enjoy that aroma before you get stuck in. It is a little bit old school in that sense, but I think it's about time to taste this beer then. So this one is the Crystallography, a West Coast IPA from Cloudwater Brewing Company in Manchester in England. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Make sure you check out this brewery if you get the chance. Let's go for it. Oh yeah. Now that's quite interesting. Absolutely. Yeah. That is a very, very quirky beer, because it gives you the same sort of, it has got the dryness which appears to come from the malty side of things, like they were saying, but yeah, the dryness almost gives you the impression of bitterness. But it's quite obvious with this beer that the majority of hops have been added later on. Remember, when it comes to deciding your IBUs in the beer, if you add the hops early on in the boil, that's when they give you the most bitterness. But as you go through the boil, normally an IPA like this has a boil for somewhere between 70 and 90 minutes. But yeah, if you add the hops earlier on, you get more bitterness out of them. If you add them later on, then you get more flavour and aroma. There's basically a trade-off as you go, as you boil the wort, essentially. But yeah, this one, you've got a real... The dryness that this beer has almost just gives you the impression of hoppy bitterness. So this is a really interesting aspect, actually. And I'm going to say thumbs up to... Cloudwater for this one. I think this is a pretty damn solid beer, this. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not surprised, because we know that these guys are very, very capable. But yeah, they've done something here, I think, that is quite different to the other beers that I've had from them before. Of course, the guys like Rob Hopsine and you know, Peter Clueless Drinker, and you know, they're a lot more likely to review these beers more regular than I am. So do check out their reviews of these beers, because you'll see lots more different ones from them than you will from me. But I really like this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? Straight away, across the middle of your palate, you do get a nice, there is a nice little bit of a soft kind of white bready character to this one. Yeah, definitely pale malt in the base here. I wonder how they're getting the dryness out of this one. Is it a wee bit of like Pilsner malt or something? Or I'd be really curious to know exactly what it is. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Ectopils from OO Brewing in Gothenburg. They really like a dry pils up there, and the malty character to this one really reminds me of that. So I wonder if some of the dryness is coming from a wee bit of a Pilsner malt addition here. But yeah, in the middle of your palate, there's a pale malty white bready base there, and it's just kind of around the very edge of that middle third of your tongue, like in a circle. You just get that dryness out of the beer, which is very interesting. As you go on to the back third of your palate, you've got a nice soft, you've got a kind of slightly thicker white bready note coming out of the beer, which is quite nice. And you can just feel that back third of your tongue, it's a little bit thicker. There's a few grainy things towards the back end of the beer, and a few kind of more bread crusty notes in there. But yeah, this is the malty side of this beer is very, very kind of bready leaning. If you go to the centre of your palate, it's a little bit of a sweet McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing that comes out of it, for sure. So I really like that about this beer, absolutely. So yeah, how would you say, yeah, the more that you drink of this beer, you get more of the kind of brown sugary notes out of it. Sweet, there is a wee bit of a sweet caramel note builds in the middle of your palate there, and that's the booziness of the beer. Absolutely. So yeah, you've got a wee bit of that kind of sweetness in there, and as you move out from the centre of your palate, it's definitely more biscuity. I'm sure that Rob Hopsine actually said to me that this beer was supposed to be like a tribute to Pliny the Elder or something. I'm sure he said that to me at some stage, and it definitely does. The malty side of this beer really has that kind of vibe to it, to be honest. It's got that more, for a West Coast IPA, it's definitely at the breadier end of the spectrum rather than the more oily, caramelly side of things. But yeah, I think that kind of covers the malty side of the beer quite nicely, to be honest with you. Yes, like slightly thicker white bready note at the back of the palate, a little bit more bread crusty, and then in the middle of the palate you've got a more kind of crisp white bready note, and it almost tastes like there's a bit of Pilsner malt just in a circle around it, and then the boozy brown sugars in the middle of the tongue, and more McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of notes as you move out towards the edge of the palate there. So yeah, it's pretty damn nice. In the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a little bit of earthiness in this one. As you move further forward, there is a wee tiny hint of a sort of herbal quality there, but not a lot. It very quickly becomes more kind of floral and aromatic, for sure. And yeah, it does taste, I don't know if it really tastes resinous, it maybe has a little bit of a resiny quality to it, but it's quite spicy and aromatic. You don't get so much of that in the aroma, and the main reason I think you won't get so much of it in the aroma is probably the lack of or the lower amount of early edition hops, to be honest with you. And that's the main difference between this beer and something like Pliny the Elder or Sierra Nevada Torpedo. You would use Columbus or Chinook for that sense. Chinook would give you the more piney resinous notes, and Columbus would give you the more spicy note. And this beer does have a little bit more of the kind of spicy thing to it, although in fairness, as you progress into the aftertaste, you get a bit of piney resin. So maybe there's maybe both of those hops have been used as an early addition hop, but I would guess that in probably in nowhere near the same quantity as would be used if you were going for, you know, a 70, 80, 100 IBU sort of West Coast IPA. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, the beer is distinctly more light and grassy, and yeah, it does go together really quite nicely in that sense. So yeah, the green side of the beer for me leans towards that floral, aromatic and quite spicy side of things, but the soft grassiness kind of comes out a little bit more later on as well. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of this beer then. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me, as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. This beer has a little bit of that oiliness you would expect of a West Coast IPA, and the fruits come out really nice. Like I say, this has definitely got a kind of old school vibe to it. This isn't any of the kind of crazy new hops that you're getting these days. This is like Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic, Centennial. It's something like that that's going on in here. But yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a little bit of a kind of stronger passion fruity note, but as you move further forward from that, it's definitely got a little bit more of a kind of softer passion fruit, and also a kind of mango-y note. You get one or two little apricot-y, there is a wee apricot-y kind of vibe to this one, but not a lot. I think it is, yeah, stronger passion fruit, lighter passion fruit, and then mango, and then as you reach the front half of that kind of front third of your tongue, there's a more oily tangerine note out of this one. Although in fairness, the depth of the orange in this one does make me wonder if it is Amarillo. And it could well be. It could well be that this beer is using the same hop blend as Pliny the Elder actually is. If as I say, I'm pretty sure Rob told me this was supposed to be a tribute to Pliny the Elder, but yeah, it definitely has a nice kind of thing there. So I do wonder, I mean, the oranges come across as, they do have a little bit of that lighter tangerine note that you would expect of, they do have a little bit of that lighter tangerine note you would expect of Mosaic, but at the same time, when the flavour progresses, you get a bit more depth to them and a bit more oiliness almost, and that makes me think Amarillo, and Amarillo is the more old school of the orangey hops. So yeah, but then as you reach the kind of front edge of the tongue, I'm pretty certain there's a bit of Centennial in here. I'm pretty certain there's that, because it really has a little bit of zest on the kind of front edge of the tongue. You get more and more of that as you progress further into the aftertaste too. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is really quite nice. Old school passion fruit, mango, tangerine oranges, and a bit of a kind of lemony zest sort of thing. Suits the beer very, very well. But yeah, this is lovely. This is lovely stuff actually. So yeah, big thumbs up to Cloudwater Brewing Company for this beer. And it's just interesting that you can take such a different approach and get quite a similar result, to be honest. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It does, the bitterness in this beer does build the further that you go into the aftertaste. But on that note, let's shift on to the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied, something like that. I'd probably say top end of mid-bodied, to be honest. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. Again, it feels like quite a clean beer, but quite smooth at the same time. So yeah, mid-bodied, smooth and clean. Absolutely. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this beer's got to have, some bitterness too. I think this one could be about, it could be about 50 IBUs, to be honest with you. So yeah, I want to say this beer, it has to have about 50, maybe 60 IBUs at a push, but at the same time, it does feel like the bitterness in this beer, part of it's coming from the kind of malty dryness in a way. So yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I know that in some cases with beers like this, they will add like a little bit of plum sugar, or is it plum or is it fig sugar? There's some kind of sugar that they add sometimes into these sort of West Coast IPAs to give you a wee bit of a kind of red fruity thing. And I mean, you will notice that with this beer, that you almost get a slightly sort of figgy, candied strawberry almost kind of thing. You will get a bit of that on the front of the palate the further you progress into the aftertaste. So yeah, they can add things into that. So I'd really be curious to know how they did that sort of drying element that this beer has. As you'll know if you've watched the channel, I'm a huge ingredients nerd when it comes to beers. But yeah, it's very nice. This, as I say, nice kind of smooth and quite crisp malty base to it. Wouldn't surprise me if it's got a bit of Pilsner malt. It's got a degree of sweetness in there as well. I think about 60-ish IBUs, 50, 60 IBUs to the beer, but it does feel like it's a bit more than that. Remember, IBUs is my weakest part of reviewing beer, absolutely. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's quite wet and it's quite juicy. And it's not really oily. I think and again, this beer really highlights the kind of breadier end of the spectrum for the West Coast IPA for me. You get more oily ones such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo and stuff like this, but yeah, this definitely highlights the more bready end of the spectrum, like Pliny the Elder. So yeah, I think that's a nice place to round off this review. So yeah, it was awesome to review this beer from Cloudwater Brewing Company. As I say, I love crystallography as a technique, so that was the main reason. Pardon me, that this one kind of struck me. I didn't realise until I got it out of the box, I think, that it was a West Coast IPA, but that's certainly been quite a nice surprise. I literally bought this beer because of the name and the artwork and stuff, so yeah, this was definitely pretty cool. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. A lovely West Coast IPA. It is very similar to Pliny the Elder for sure, so yeah, as I say, I'm pretty sure Rob told me it was a tribute to this beer, but it's done it in quite a radically different way, so I think it's a really interesting one, this. So if you do get the chance to try this beer, I highly recommend that you do. And yeah, if you get the chance to try anything from Cloudwater Brewing, then I recommend that as well. They've got their core range of beers now, and I would say that those are probably the most likely, the ones that you are most likely to come across. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Cloudwater Brewing Company. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point fairly soon, but in the meantime, this was the Crystallography, a West Coast IPA at 8% ABV from Cloudwater Brewing Company in Manchester down in England. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slanja, Skull, cheers, and make sure you check out this beer and some of the other Cloudwater beers if you get the chance. Next review, hopefully we can get something darker from these guys. Cheers.